I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. Hello, Foxy listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Today, we're talking about everything spooky. I'm just kidding. Not spooky, but scary. With Halloween right around the corner, just a month away, it got me thinking about scary things. And as many of you know, entrepreneurship and business is just something I absolutely love to do. I consider it a hobby. And because of that, I can relate just about everything to something I'm doing in business. What do I mean about scary things? Well, there are many times in my own life and in my clients' lives that I know that we do not take challenges. We do not do certain goals. We don't write them down on the to-do list because they're scary. I mean, we come up with really great excuses of why we can't do it. There's not enough time. There's not enough money. I don't have the resources. I don't have the people in place to be able to do it. I'm just not quite up there yet. Who's going to want to listen to me? Who's going to want to learn from me? Who's going to want to take this course? We can come up with all of these things that seem like really legitimate reasons to why we can't do it. But at the end of the day, it's just scary. It's scary to think of what happens if I actually do this. Where do I go from there? If I hit this huge, monstrous goal, then what? Like, what happens when I accomplish this? And that fear can tend to stop us from doing this. So let me give you an example in my own personal life. I have wanted to write a book. I've wanted to be an author, but in particular, I've wanted to write a book since I was a kid. And at first, and for the longest time, it was a romance novel. But as I started getting into entrepreneurship, I really wanted to write a business book. Now, my main thinking behind this was a lot of the books that were out there that I was reading that were for business was too advanced, or it said things like, just get your $1 million sponsor to be able to help you. And it just seemed out of scope for where I was at that point in time. And I was really finding it hard to find a book that was like, hey, you're a beginner. Here's what you can do to sort of get a leg up. And so the idea came to me of that's the book that I want to write. If I'm going to write a business book, I want it to be for the person that, can't afford to take these huge courses, can't afford, to hire a virtual assistant or an employee. That's who I want to give tangible advice to, and that's who I want to help. I still want to help the people, obviously, that can pay me, but I want to give something to somebody who was in the situation that I was, just looking for anybody to give them advice that would make sense in the situation that they were in. And so, this idea came around in my head. It showed up on some of my to-do lists. It would show up on my, top 100 things I want to accomplish before I die. It would come up anytime that somebody was like, write something you've always wanted to do but never did, and in courses and webinars and workshops. And I'm sure a lot of you out there are like, I remember these lists. And this would always come up, but nothing ever happened. I had a few things that I started writing, a couple of Word documents here and there that, I'd get really motivated and I'd want to do it and I'd want to write it. And alas, it would never see anybody else's eyes but my own. And it really, I would say it was probably around February or March of last year that I started going, why am I not doing this? This has been a goal of mine for a really long time. And like, why am I not doing it? And I had to take my own advice. It was scary to me. Writing the book wasn't scary. Coming up with the idea wasn't scary. Doing the outline wasn't scary. Putting the time and the work in wasn't scary. But having to send that manuscript to a stranger to read and assess was terrifying to me. Of course, my husband said, it'll be great. It's fantastic. I love it. And so did my mom. And so did my friends. And so did my other entrepreneurial friends. They said, I love this idea. I think it's great. I would read it. I would buy it. But in reality, I was terrified for somebody who didn't know me, didn't know my personality, wasn't around to know what I stand for and what I do, to read this. And I didn't really think that they would get the full grasp of what I was trying to do. I was scared. I was coming up with excuses out of being scared. So I decided this was it. It was, I was reading Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed, and, was really, later on in the year diving, into her podcast and stuff. And I thought, you're right. We can do hard things, and I need to start doing hard things. And this was the one that was on my list that was always the hardest. So I signed up with a wonderful organization called Big Sky Authors and went to a writing retreat with Tammy Plunkett, who is an amazing author, and really got inspired and had a lot of guidance towards, here's how to write it. Here's some things you should know, the technical sides of it. All of that was covered, and it was just left to writing. Now, at this writing retreat, there was a moment where we had 5 minutes, I think it was 5 minutes, that we had to read part of what we had written on this weekend to everybody else in the group. Oh my God. I've never been so nervous in my life. And I pretty much talk for a living, but this was really scary because I didn't know which part to pick. And I was really going to be putting myself out there. Now, it was a wonderful group. Everybody was so super supportive, but it was still kind of like, I don't know if I can do this. I did it. I'm proud to say that I did it. I read it. I had great feedback, but once that retreat ended, to be honest, it's not like all of a sudden I sat down and was like, that's it, I'm cracking this manuscript out, because I knew that the part that I picked to read was the best part that I had written, right? I showed them the best of the best. So what about all of the other stuff? So again, that fear and that, that sense of being scared of all of the rest of it came back. And so I decided that what I needed to do was just stop being a big fat baby. I needed to pick up my big girl panties, and I just needed to get this done and send it out, because one of two things was going to happen. Either I was going to get the feedback of, this is shit, like, don't quit your day job, which then at least I would know. Or I was going to get some kind of, maybe semi-positive feedback, like, this is something that, that we can work with. Here's some areas that you need to improve, and I could work on it. So I was going to get a definitive answer. So instead of looking at it as, well, I'm either going to get a positive response or a negative response, I thought, I'm going to get a positive response or a positive response. Because even if they say, don't quit your day job, at least now I know. I don't need to waste time on it anymore. I can do other things. I can put all of that energy and time that I was using into writing into something else, and that would be okay. So now I was just faced with getting 2 positive feedbacks. Now, I'd love to tell you that I was like skipping through the forest and being like, this is lovely, 2 positive feedbacks. But there was still the negativity that came in there. I mean, let's be real. But at least I did it. So I'm happy to say that on September 18th, I did a scary, hard thing. and I sent my manuscript in to be assessed. And it was terrifying. If you follow me on social media, you might have seen the picture. I had my son, my husband, and I even had my dog helping me to hit the send button because I was still right up to that very end moment, terrified to do it. But I did it and I sent it off and I took a breath of relief because I had done the thing that scared me the most. And now I was on to the next scary thing because it doesn't end. You don't do one scary thing and then it's over. But that was okay because I took time, like I've been telling you guys, in previous episodes, I took the time to celebrate that win. It wasn't about all of the other scary shit, all of the other hard things that were going to come up. I didn't even think about those. It was about this time, this moment, this goal, this accomplishment. And so we celebrated and we had a great dinner and I enjoyed myself and I enjoyed sitting in that moment of, wow, I did it. For so long, this was on my list and I did it. Like, yay me. And I was patting myself on the back the whole day. And then the next day I fell into a little bit of a pit because I was like, oh my God, what if she hates it? What if it's horrible? What if she's like, don't quit your day job? And I had all of those other worries. But again, I centered myself back and just went, you know what? I need to send good vibes out into the universe. And again, no matter which way this goes, it's a positive thing. At least I know. And I'm happy to say that within a few days, I did get an email back from Tammy, which had the best line I have ever read. It said, thank you for sending this in. I've been able to sit down and read a part of it, and I really think you have a good writing voice. That was all it said. You would have thought that she handed me like a New York Times bestseller award. I was so excited for that small piece of feedback saying, hey, I like what you're doing. It was a flood of relief. It was a flood of joy. It lifted me up. It made me feel like, yes, like, oh my God, somebody else read this, a virtual stranger read this and is enjoying it. And I wasn't fooled to think that, hey, we're going to go right to print. I know that there's other work, but I started to sit back and I went, gee, if that felt so good, if getting that small, tiny feedback of a short sentence of saying, I really think you have a great writing voice, if that tiny feedback gave me so much relief and so much joy, am I doing that for others? And that's what I want you to think about through this whole story. Are you giving those small bits of feedback when someone does something scary? If you have an employee that is doing something that's, say, out of the realm, they're starting a new position, they're taking on extra tasks, they're doing a project they've never done before, are you giving them small senses of feedback along the way that lets them know, hey, I see you. I see what you're doing. I recognize your effort. And I think it's awesome. Because I think we all need that. We need it. We want to receive it. We need to make sure that we're giving that because it gives a sense of relief and it gives a sense of accomplishment. So I want to challenge you. Your first challenge in this is do that. Do it to somebody. If you don't have any employees, that's okay. Do it to another business owner. Is there another solopreneur that you know that you can reach out to and say, hey, I see that you did this thing and that it was scary for you. And I think it's awesome. I think that what you're doing is incredible. Do it to a stranger. Do it to yourself. Send yourself an email from a third party and just say, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. So make sure that you're giving that feedback and that help to make someone know that they are on the right path. Now, getting back to us, so often we talk ourselves out of what could be our greatest accomplishments. Like I said before, we come up with tons of excuses, tons of reasons why we can't do this, why we shouldn't do this. And so, what I want you to do, your second challenge, I want you to write a list of all the things that you wanted to do. Or if you're like me, find an old goals sheet and see what is on it. Or maybe you just know off of the top of your head. Maybe there's a thing that you're like, yeah, I've always wanted to do that and I never did. Write it down. You only need one, but write down as many as you can. But I just want one. Now I want you to look at it. Is there any, if you have a whole list, is there any one that is on that list that you really wanted to do, but you keep talking yourself out of? Now think, was it a valid reason? Because sometimes there is valid reasons why you can't do a certain thing. So is there a valid reason, or was it just too scary? Were you too scared to think of, what if I do accomplish this? Then what? Where do I go from here? Because oftentimes we think that there's a sky. There is a limit, right? We're going to hit the top. We're going to hit the roof. And if I do this, where do I go from here? I promise you, no matter what you accomplish in life, there will always be something bigger and better that you can do because you're at a different place. Think of where you were 2 years ago. You weren't where you are right now. Things change, moments change. You grew, you learned, you changed something that you did in business, in your personal life. There's always something different. There's always something new to explore. So there really is no such thing as a ceiling because we can always find something else. So is it something that you were doing that because you just thought it was too scary to do? And what I want you to do is I want you to take a sticky note and I want you to put it on your computer or on the wall in front of you or on your desk or somewhere that you are going to see it every single day. And I want you to write down 2 steps that you are going to take this week to start getting that goal accomplished. So if you were like me and your goal is that you always wanted to write a book, write, I'm going to write my book. And what are 2 steps that you can take? Maybe that's actually just opening up a document and starting to do an outline of what it is that you want to write. Maybe that's doing a voice memo and saying, here's what my book is going to be about. And these are why people are going to want to read it. Maybe your goal is just getting better at something. Then find that course, find that thing that you need to do, whatever it is that you need to learn. But 2 steps. Now, you cannot cheap out on these steps. I'm wagging my finger at you. You can't do simple steps. If your challenge was to write a book, you can't go, I'm going to open a Word document and then open a Word document and title it My Book and be like, look at me. Make these challenging steps. Make these actual things that are getting you farther ahead. Put some real thought into it. Otherwise, that goal is just going to sit on list after list after list. And we want to get that goal accomplished because once we get this goal accomplished, there's so many other amazing things that are out there that we can't even see yet. But when we get to that point, we're all of a sudden going to see over the hill and there's going to be so much more left open for us. So I would love to hear what it is that has been on your list for a while. And I would love to hear what 2 steps it is that you're taking because I am here to help hold you accountable to those. So let me know what they are and I will make sure that I help you take the steps this week to get your goal accomplished. And as you're doing all of this, promise me that you're going to make sure that you find time to have fun. Because as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?